Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And man, I am excited about this show, folks. Two of my great friends and huge insights into what's going on in the veteran community. And I just want to say to you fellows, happy Veterans Day. Sam, happy Veterans Day. Scott, man, it is great to see you all.
Thanks, Otis. You too, buddy.
It's great to see you guys.
Awesome. Camden, why don't you kick us off with getting us started?
All right, so I got a little lightning round to get us going, get the juices flowing a little bit on this. So first, just for all of my fellow civilians who might be listening to this, who might hear Green Beret, SEAL, Ranger, Delta Force, all this different stuff, and it all just kind of blurs together. I want to give you guys each a chance to just quickly define what a SEAL is, what a Green Beret is. So, Sam, I'll throw it over to you first. What is a Navy SEAL?
They are part of what's called the Special Operations Community. And so they're members of the Naval Service who have decided to pursue a career conducting operations in sea, air, and land with regards to commando type stuff. So primarily their missions are typically direct action, which are sort of highly stylized infantry operations, special reconnaissance, which modern day special reconnaissance has changed a lot since the old days that I'm sure Scott and Otis recall, of ridge lines and different sort of stuff. But really a whole range of different types of commando type stuff.
Awesome. And Scott, what is a Green Beret?
There is a lot of confusion. They're also part of the special operations community as well. And I always tell civilians that Green Berets do some of the stuff that Sam talked about, but that's not really their specialty. Their specialty is to work by, with, and through indigenous people to help them stand up on their own from the inside out. I tell folks that a modern day Green Beret is kind of a mixture of John Wick, Lawrence of Arabia, and the Verizon guy. Relationship-based connectors, really. That's their preferred specialty, is to work with indigenous people.
Love that. Well, without getting too deep into any sort of, special operations rivalry here, I want to have a little lightning round to go through some things and just to ask Scott, Sam, which one do you think guys are better at, Navy SEALs or Green Berets? We're going to go through just a handful of things real quick. So Sam, I'll have you answer this one first, then Scott. So who do you think is better at push-ups?
I mean, it just depends on who you're dealing with. I know plenty of Green Berets that could out-push up a SEAL, and I know plenty of SEALs that could out-push up a Green Beret. I mean, the defining lines between your modern special operator have really gotten blurry in the past, let's say, when we went to war together, everything changed. So the fitness level, the mental toughness, the entire construct of what it meant to be part of the joint special operations community, it's much more of a brotherhood now than it was in, let's call it, sort of older generation SOF, where there were much more rivalries because we had to work together to get the job done. Both forces are just premier, excellent operators, excellent soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines.
Yeah. I really agree. I know that's probably disappointing to some listeners who were hoping for a SEAL SF rivalry, but I think he's right. I think Sam's right. I really do. I just there's so much interoperability, and it's not just SEALs and Green Berets. It's Rangers, it's Marine Special Ops, Recon, Air Force Commandos. There's so much interoperability that when you talk about like baseline things, fitness, things like that, it's just it's inherent. And so, you can't operate together if you don't have that level of fitness in today's modern war.
All right. So second one, this one should be a little bit easier to get a clean answer on. And I'm just going to say camping. Which one's better at camping? I think I know the answer.
Green Berets. I'll answer that.
Green Berets certainly probably do more field craft.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question there.
All right, this one might be another tie. How about jumping out of airplanes?
I don't know. What do you think, Sam? I mean, I think
It's
again,
hard.
it's a tough one because I mean,
All right.
both have to do it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll blow through these last two because I have a feeling we're going to get 2 more ties on this. But how about blowing shit up? Just good old fashioned. We got something over there. Need to get rid of it. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Both breaching capabilities and the Green Berets and the SEALs, that we go to the top level schools. We have access to the same demolition material. There's different techniques that are basically part and parcel to various units. And I would say at certain levels of American capability, these are similar capabilities. Again, I can't. It's indistinguishable.
Although, Sam, I got to say, man, you guys blow shit up in the harbor. You know, I mean,
do it
that's
a lot in the water.
Yeah, that's there's really something to that. You know, the idea of blowing stuff up in harbors and ships that are underway has always been fascinating to me. I mean, we've got a few teams. I guess our our scuba teams can do some version of that. But I mean, that's a universal capability with the SEALs, I believe.
All right, last one. What about just good old fashioned little game of chess? Who are you betting on? We got a Green Beret, we got a SEAL. That's all we know. Where's the money flying on that table?
SEALs don't have the patience for chess.
There we go.
They don't. Like, I'll give that.
Just lay that one out there.
Just
That's easy.
kick,
That one's
just
easy.
just kick the board over and let the punches fly.
Scott's too busy teaching someone else to play chess for him, right?
Yeah, we contract somebody to play.
That's right.
All right. Well, that's it for my lightning round. I'll throw it over to you,
right.
Ned.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, again, thank you. You know, this is a special time to be able to do this, and I appreciate y'all taking the time to spend with us. I wanted to dive into first and we'll walk through it. Okay, so we'll walk through a little bit of transition, and I'd like for you to share parts of your story, but I'm looking for what's the perspective that we're hearing and seeing from our fellows that are soon to be veterans, and then we'll move on to the state of affairs, the health, and then what's going on in the larger veteran community. So, Scott, I'll throw it to you to kick off the whole transition perspective as you're seeing it.
Otis, could you say that? Repeat the last question because it just froze up.
Oh yeah. So, what's your perspective on the transition state of affairs for the guys that are taking the uniform off now? What are you seeing? And how does your story apply towards them as a lesson that they can take also?
Yeah,
let Scott go first, and then I can chime in.
Well, I think it's a great question. You know, I base my my answer on that with the nonprofit work that we do, the Hero's Journey, and 2 levels of that. One is we teach storytelling to veterans, military families in transition. So I get the opportunity to hear, a lot of the backstories of where our men and women have been, and then what's on their mind. And then the other thing has been the play, honestly, as we tour around the country with Last Out in the talkbacks, you hear a lot of feedback. I would say, that there's a good and maybe a good and bad side, a positive and a negative to what's going on in transition right now. I worry about the mental health aspect of transition, particularly in the realm of just isolation. I think the transition piece moves so fast that it's easy to get overwhelmed and kind of feel like you're on your own. And I just, no matter how much we talk about it, boy, there's just no experience like taking that uniform off and walking outside for the first time and not being part of that element, that unit, that outfit, whatever. But when I was talking to a guy today who just finished up with the Honor Foundation, and there are so many nonprofit efforts out there right now that are making big strides on transition. And frankly, I think the military is really starting to figure it out with giving guys more time for internships and things like that. I'm pretty optimistic, honestly, in terms of how the public-private arena is coming together on this. A lot of challenges remain, but I certainly believe that transition is better than when the three of us hung up the cleats. That's my read on it.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Sam, what's your perspective on that?
I think that the military in general, and then we as military persons, like to try to characterize things in terms of 2-year increments, just because we've been so institutionalized to believe that things happen in about 2 years. Like, hey, you're going to go to this unit and do this job for 2 years. Again, that's kind of dependent on whether you're an officer or an NCO. Hey, you're going to go on this other sort of deployment cycle, and the train up, deployment, recovery, everything else, about 1.5 years, 2 years, whatever the case may be. And so there's this, let's call it a social meme, the system of beliefs that circulates around, well, you should be good in about 2 years. No. It's quite possible to feel lost for a decade after transitioning. And it really is largely dependent on where you are geographically located. Because if you're not located, if you're like me and you choose to go to a different place where basically there are very few people that you served with or can relate to, you will feel that you don't relate to most people that you encounter for a lot longer than 2 years. And it's a function of a variety of different things, but in the big scheme of things, you're stepping off of a fast-moving train and then coming back to Earth, and all of your radar systems are off, right? The way you understand how people communicate, the body language that you're supposed to discern meaning from is wholly different than how you communicated in the military, and what people's word meant, and ethics and integrity. So for instance, on an average day in an average, not even just special operations, in most military units, people are there with a sense of mission and purpose. They're not there because they're expecting to ring sort of the wealth bell, so on and so forth. And you can generally believe that people are going to do what they say they're going to do and mean what they say, and they're usually going to deliver on their promises. That's different. Out in the real world, that is not the case. I'll just stop there.
One thing I would build on it real quick there, if I could, is that, I used to say that transition was like changing planets, because they really are two different civil societies, even from like anthropological terms. The military is a status society. It is based on the collective. It is honor based, and everything that you do is determined by your status within that collective, right? So you are honor bound to the group. Whereas in the civilian world, it's a contract society. It is based on the individual. It is built around the individual. It is much less about honor and much more about one's achievement. So just like Sam said, by definition, you're literally walking from one type of civil society into the next, where even the definition of honor is different. And if you don't know that going in, hell yeah, it could take a decade. And even if you do know it, but because it's so radically different.
I'd be interested. How do you think? I was just going to say, how do you think you can balance those two of going into that different world? And, Scott, I think you made the joke before when we had you on before about it's like some veterans get out and they just want to rage against it. Like, this is all wrong. We don't have any honor, all this kind of stuff. And then so you wind up outside of that machine. Whereas there's got to be a little bit of a balance there where it's like, look, I can see these things are wrong. We should have more honor, whatever that application is that veterans can help to lead us towards. But at the same time, you have to be a part of the world. You have to be a part of that machine in order to change it. Sam, what are your thoughts on that?
You can spend, so there was a useful sort of learning that I stumbled across at some point, which basically broke down the world into things you can control, things you can influence and things you have absolutely no control over. And I eventually, in short order, came to the determination, hey, see the stuff that you have no control over. Do not let it get to you. Do not become emotionally reactive to the things that you can't control, because there's going to be a lot of things that if you let it will destroy you on the outside. Absolutely will eat at every fiber of your being, because it's not the way you created meaning. It's not the life you've led. But unfortunately, and the sad thing is, there's no going back, right? So you can either choose to not be as reactive and not allow the things that you can't control to impact you emotionally, do the best that you can do to influence the things in a positive direction within that circle of what you can influence, which is very little. And then the things that you have complete control over, like your fitness, like a decision to either focus on health or focus on drowning your sorrows, like focus on the health. Do the things that made you successful when you were going into the military or any sort of selection. I'm not even saying special operations. The things that enabled you to be a hero to yourself and to others when you first joined, do those things. Be that focused, and transition will be a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
I'll agree with that, and the fact that I've seen that, and that's actually one of the key pieces I teach all my veteran clients that I'm, or soon to be veteran clients that I'm working with, is that you have all the skills up here. And Scotty, I love the two planet thing. I always use, you're deploying to Germany, and you got to work with the German army, and it's the exact same thing. It's the same linear ambush. You just got to do it differently within their culture and their language. And that's really what it is. I mean, we've had the best planning and execution tools drilled into our brains. It's ingrained in us. And all we got to do is learn how to speak it to others. And I think that's a huge piece of it. And I want to shift to the next subject, but I just want to, if you had a final comment on that transition piece, Sam, I'll let you go.
It took me years to figure out that the civilian world works on a system of relationships devoid of actual intellectual merit in most cases, technical skills in most cases, so on and so forth. It is all relationship based. So you can either learn that lesson the hard way and more than once, or you can get on board and start to do the things necessary to become empathetic towards others, to chase the use of expletives out of your language, because that throws people off constantly, and realize that all the good opportunities in the civilian world come through systems of relationships and mentors. All those things that you think you're applying for, all the best jobs, all the best opportunities, all the wealth, it's all based on people that have taken a keen interest in you and you develop a genuine relationship for. And you know how to do this. It's just a matter of translating how to create a relationship in the civilian world, the nuances that are a bit different than how you created relationships in the team room or, back in the battalions or whatever the case may be.
Scott, what do you think? Closing out this subject.
Well, it's just a really good place to leave it where Sam did. I think the only thing that maybe I would add is that I don't think anybody owes us a damn thing. I know we're conditioned to think that, but we're just not owed anything that way. It's not going to happen. It's not going to go down like that. You might get some free tickets to a ball game, some shit like that. But I mean, that's about the extent of it. This notion that somehow, because we ran those miles or whatever, that you're entitled to this or that. And I don't think a lot of people think that, but I do think there is a danger in that if we're not careful. And I'll just give you one example, but I teach storytelling, the art and science of storytelling, right? Of authentic influence through narrative competence. And I am, it never ceases to amaze me the amount of individuals, including special operators, who come out and think that they're already storytellers or speakers because they lived some shit. And that has nothing to do with storytelling. Nothing. In fact, it's awful many times. It's unwatchable because just like anything else in life, it's a skill. And, just because you lived an experience doesn't, parlay into, okay, well, I can do this in the civilian world. It's a learned skill. And I think that's just being open to that reality. That Sam's right. Our community brings a lot of baseline things, but there does require a level of humility and openness to make that transition into the appropriate context.
Thanks for that. Now, I wanted to shift to health, and there's really, I was about to say there's really two kinds, but there's not, because we're starting to identify this mental health thing, and then there's the supposed physical health. But it makes me think of that same problem set that I'm always fighting, which is work-life balance. And there's no work-life balance. It's all life. There is no mental health and physical health. It's all my health. And now that mental health is starting to come into more prominent, if you will, or it's no longer the hidden disease. How are you, Scott, seeing that aspect, both physical and mental? I want to address the whole health of our veterans and what we graduate with is one way of putting it, and how we can move forward in that space.
That's a great question. I'm just going to kind of bring it to my own journey right now. I've been out for 11 years. This past November 2nd would be 11 years. And in that time, I've pursued a range of, I guess, skills and endeavors. And I like to think that I've developed a pretty holistic approach to mind, body, spirit, and, regimen and all those things. And hell, I teach it, but to be perfectly candid, on this show before we started here, I was in the bathroom nearly throwing up from a headache, and I've had it for a while, like coming off the play. I don't know what's going on, to be honest with you. I'm struggling with a lot of things coming out of that tour, and I don't have the answers. I just know that I've been out 11 years and I've been working it really hard, and I've, just like a lot of other people, I've had dark moments and up moments, and but I do know that I'm able to talk about, like in this room right here with you guys, but also openly, about my alcoholism and things that I could never have talked about several years ago. And I'm talking about just me personally. I wasn't in a place to do that. But I also think there is more receptivity to, the mental health journey and whatever it is that, because I don't think, honestly, I don't know that we know some of the shit we've incurred from 20 years of war, if I'm being super candid. I don't think we know. I think we're still figuring out a lot of this craziness. And I think we got to talk to each other. I think we got to look out for each other. I think we got to be really, open about when stuff's going on. And I've been very open about my mental health status lately with people, because I don't want to put it inside again. I've done that, and it's not a good thing for me. It's better if I had a busted knee, me and Sam would talk about my busted knee, right? If I had a fracture, Otis and I bitch about our shoulders all the time, right? But for some reason, if something's going on between this hamburger between the ears, if it's something on this hamburger between our ears, like it's off limits, and I don't subscribe to that anymore. I do think it's gotten better for us to talk about it, but there's still a long way to go on that issue, I think.
Sam, what are your thoughts on that?
One thing I'd want to add.
Go ahead, Cam.
I was just wanted to add real quick of talking about, like understanding that, like, the idea that we fully understand most of these mental health things is like completely false. A lot of this stuff is ongoing, and to each person it's different. All these different things, like Scott, what you just said there, the things you incur over the 20 years of war, 20 years of deployments, that's completely different. If they're pulling studies about PTSD from other things, you're going to look completely different. We talked about it on the show before, Dad, that behavioral science has this huge bias towards American college students because that's where all the data is pulled from. They don't have data from veterans. And I think that's an important piece of bringing that conversation forward, is to help to bring those extra data points, and why talking about it is so important, because then we can start to put that data points together and start to actually connect some of those dots.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose.
Are you tired of dealing with the cost of bad leadership? It's time to make a change.
The Green Beret Leadership Program is your key to unlocking the full potential of your team.
By using GBLP to develop leaders in your business, you'll get a proactive and responsible team that embraces challenges, takes calculated risks, and takes action without constant supervision.
Developing great leaders can take a lot of time and energy, and that's why businesses tend to opt for the trial by fire and the school of hard knocks path to leadership. The truth is that wastes time and money, and folks, there's never enough of either one of those, and puts lots of extra stress on your leadership team.
Oh yeah, and that stress has lots of bad outcomes for your team. Poor leadership drives away your quality talent, and the longer you wait to fix the problem, the more talent you're going to lose and the more money you're going to lose.
With the Green Beret Leadership Program, you can use battle-tested leadership principles of the Green Berets to develop great leaders in your team faster than with the School of Hard Knocks. You'll see changes in just a few short weeks.
And the longer you wait to take action, the more damage poor leadership can do and will do to your business.
Learn more about the impact of GBLP, that's the Green Beret Leadership Program, can have on your business, and schedule your free coaching call with the Green Beret coach. That's me, folks, Otis. Now at findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP. I'll say it again, findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP, or you can click the link in the description below.
I mean, I think that the lens through which any individual person, be they a veteran or civilian, sees the world is shaped by the million things that went through those eyes and went through that mind. And I think every situation is radically different than every other situation. With regards to anybody being able to sit across the table and offer guidance and advice that is going to land perfectly every time, I don't think that's ever going to be the case. I think that it's incumbent to operate from a foundation of where the individual who is suffering takes as much complete control that they're able to within the power of their capability to self-rescue, basically. And they've got to use the tools that are available and approach tools with an open mind. For instance, I'll use as an example, meditation. For years and years and years, I thought it's malarkey, it's junk. I can tell you 5 years into it, with a daily practice of meditation, just 10 minutes a day, changed my life. And it's not junk, right? It's if you rationalize it, if you go to the gym for an hour a day and work on your physical fitness, does it not make sense to spend 10 minutes in the morning to try to work on your mental fitness? So I started with an app called Waking Up, Sam Harris. It doesn't have a lot of woo-woo stuff. It's really great. Highly recommended. There are a number of them out there. But learning mindfulness, learning to be able to start to corral those monkeys in your mind is the first step toward wellness, mental wellness.
I'd like to add something to that, because I fully agree with that. I love the term self-rescue. Sam, what I say is nobody's coming. They're just not, and a lot of the great work that's being done out there is outside of the institutional leadership realm anyway. And so, but I just, from a technique perspective, I want to offer something that I was exposed to with the play. I didn't start acting until I was 50. And so I studied under some really, really good teachers, and the performance arena, what they use is diaphragmatic breathing. And of course, mindfulness meditation, but diaphragmatic breathing is a big part of that. And I have been amazed at how breath work has helped me in so many ways metabolize that sympathetic fight, flight, or freeze state down into a parasympathetic state. Meditation coupled with diaphragmatic breathing, it is really powerful stuff. And Dr. Belisa Veronich and her book, Breathing for Warriors, is phenomenal. It's a great supplement, I think, to what Sam's talking about.
One thing
I want to grab onto something
ahead.
here, though, Camden, because the thesis I'm hearing, and I'm probably hearing it because I believe this thesis also, is that there is no solution. There's no cookie cutter. We can't all put on the same uniform, the same process, and get to that self-rescue. The self-rescue, damn, what the hell did you call it, Scott? I should know that because I've heard it so many times, but I'm freezing on stage. Not the diaphragmatic breathing. If I was doing diaphragmatic breathing, I would remember it. But what did you call it, Scott? Okay.
Shit. I don't know. I mean, I was telling him that nobody's coming, but I don't know if
Nobody's
that's just
coming.
kind of
There
my
we go.
mindset.
Damn, it was so complicated.
Okay.
It was like it was a medical term or something I couldn't think of. But the point of it is what works for me ain't going to work for you, and vice versa. We can put the tools there, and I think this is a huge piece in my book, because and when it comes to suicide, and it's kind of died down a little bit, so I'm doing a lot of caveats, not to get anybody butt hurt, but generally speaking, I don't care anyways. But all this check on your buddy stuff, you know what happens when you check on your buddy? He's going to say, damn, I'm all right. No, dude, all good. Mm-hmm. And then that's the guy that goes out in the backyard and puts a cap through his brain, right? The real piece is what you two said. Is nobody's coming. We got to take care of ourselves. We got our team. We got our tribe around us to help us. But in the end, it's my methodology that works for me. That may not work for you. And I think that's a huge thing. And I'll say when my mind changed and I started to understand this better, I'd been out for probably 6 years. And because, we'd had some fellow group guys, make that wrong decision. I had a young man, one of my rugby players, who took his own life. Kid was a straight A student on skyrocket. I was going to make him captain next year. It was his sophomore year in high school, and he got in trouble and thought world had ended for him. And he hung himself that night. And where my mind changed on this whole thing is when his dad got up in that church full of probably 500, 600 people, because that's how popular he was. And he said and admitted, my son committed suicide. He didn't play like all these other people that try to hide it. He said it. He said, my son screwed up in the moment and made a bad decision that has permanent effects. That right there, that was freaking powerful. And that changed my whole perspective on what suicide is. It's a terrible decision in the moment. And I think for me, that's what I talk about. It's like, don't make that decision in the moment. And there's plenty to live for. There's plenty of opportunities to make it better. Go ahead, Camden. Sorry, I got fired up.
Oh yeah, no, and I think the thing I'd add on to that, as part of my segue here, is that when we talk about the brain and all these kind of things, we can't act like we understand all this kind of stuff. Like Sam, like you're saying, each person's going to be different, and I think this is where I think a lot of men can learn what support can look like in these situations. You know, if Sam calls me up and he's talking through something from his time in the military, I have no idea how to relate to Sam. I don't get that. I'm a military brat. Yeah, Dad, you were Green Beret. I don't get it. I don't get that to the real level to where I can actually understand what's happening there. But I can be supportive. I can be around. I can do those kind of things. And then have that support for him to then be able to self-rescue. Because that is what it comes down to. Because you're the only one who really understands what you're going through. But we can still have that support. And I just want to throw out there, because, yeah, Dad, you got me thinking on that. I got a friend that's going through a divorce. And the amount of people that won't talk to him because they don't know how to help. And it's an amazing thing of just like, even if you don't know how to help, you can still be there for each other. I think we as men struggle with that a lot. But the question I want to throw over to you, Scott, is how much do you think the physical health is driving the mental health side of it? You know, when we talk about transition, you know, I work with a lot of college athletes transitioning. And one of the big problems for them is they're not the athlete anymore. They can't go do all of these amazing things. They can't go lift weight. You know, if you're like me who had a back injury, I can't even go pick up something over 50 pounds. Like that sucks when you used to be a high performing athlete. I can only imagine what it's like, you know, being a high performing special operator and you can't do those things anymore. How much do you think that physical side and like missing that physical activity and those kind of things plays into the mental side of it, Scott?
I mean, I think it does. It would have to, right? I mean, look at what happens with pro athletes when they leave. It's a very similar thing because your identity is enshrouded in that thing that you did. And if that thing that you did was highly physical, then most likely you're going to experience a lack of identity, therefore a lack of meaning. And, you know, I spend a lot of time looking at this, again, as a storyteller, right? Because I want to understand the neuroscience of storytelling and why it matters. And you know, one of the things that I always kind of go back to is this guy, Ivan Tyrrell. He wrote the book, The Human Givens, and he's a psychiatrist. And he asserts that there are a range of innate physiological realities in every human, regardless of race, ethnicity, region, that are givens. That they're innate in all of us, and they run very deep. And one of the things that he says is one of them is meaning. Humans are meaning-seeking creatures, and we seek and assign meaning to everything that we do, right? And he's done some work on movement and meaning that I just think is phenomenal. I mean, what he has researched and found is that meaning is inextricably linked to movement, and that there's a deep connection in that is very, very primal. And so even when, you know, Sam's doing his meditation, there is intentional movement that's happening. And while I don't pretend to know all of the answers around that, I found for me that if I can just find ways to move that are functional and help me stay in flow, I feel better, you know? And so for me, that movement is storytelling on the stage and theater. That's where I find my movement to be really profound and where I have this inextricable linkage to meaning again. I can't do the shit I used to do. And if I do, like, call 911, because it's not going to go very well. I know that, but I can still move in ways that are meaningful and that give me enjoyment. And so that's my take on it, Cam, is I think that movement and meaning are linked. And as we transition, we have to find ways to functionally move that are appropriate. And there's still a lot of meaning to be had.
Sam, anything to add on that?
I think one quick recipe that will work basically for everybody with regards to getting back on board with physical wellness, no matter what shape you're in, is it's as simple as finding a class locally and showing up. And if on the first day you don't even participate in the class, fine. Just look at the class. Go away. Come back the next day. Keep coming back until you join the class, even though it's filled potentially with a bunch of civilians or whatever the case may be. They'll be welcoming. It doesn't matter what shape you start. It's the business of showing up. It's the same stuff that made the veterans successful when they showed up to MEPS and put their hand in the air. It's the same thing. It's the same thing when they told you to get in the water when it was dark and cold and miserable, but you got in because there was an outcome at the end that you wanted. If the outcome that you want is a future worth having, you have to do the work, right? Whatever the VA is prescribing you, that ain't going to do the work. That's just going to sort of mask the pain. That's not a future worth having. You've got to take the actions required to get off the X. You have to own it. When we talk about self-rescue, it doesn't mean that people, your tribe, or so to speak, isn't around you and willing to help. But, and you guys know this from the 7th group guys used to say this all the time, 7th Special Forces group. Hey, you can't want it more than the Colombians, man. You cannot want it more than the Colombians, right? Can't want it more than the person that's directly impacted. So that's a way to start down the path of sort of self-redemption, is find something and show up each day.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Great sit-up, Sam, for talking about our larger veteran tribe and that camaraderie. It's one of the things that, you know, I honestly made this huge mistake, and it took me about 2 years. I thought, you know what, I'm retired from the Army. Thank you very much, United States Army. I'm out, and walked off the stage and never to go back ever again, never to look behind me. And then I started feeling that hole in my heart. And I started wondering what was going on, what was I missing? And I came back around. And for me, it's been between my hunting buddies who are all veterans, the Retired Military Hunting Club, a couple of guys that I was a team leader with are part of that. But it's also the larger community here in Colorado Springs of our SF Association chapter. Where do you go for that veteran where you can sit down and really tell the war stories and nobody's giving you that crooked eye things? I'll throw it to you first, Sam.
I don't, for the most part, not because of anything in particular, not because I'm trying to avoid those conversations, but I thought I was personally better served to make a small handful of friends, and I do have some military friends, of course, and some SEAL and Green Beret friends here in Charleston where I live. But for the most part, day in and day out, my sort of new tribe, I think that you would say, is really my Bible group that we meet with every 2 weeks, a small handful of friends that I have at the gym. I go to the gym 5 to 6 days a week. You cannot stop me. I will change travel plans. I absolutely design my life around a set of things that I have to do every day that are non-negotiable. Drop my kid off at school, 7:30 to 9 in the gym, period. Nothing's going to stop me. Nothing. And the reason why is because that's where I'm able to, back to that circle of control thing, that shit I can control, right? My physical fitness, I am directly in control of that. That is one thing I can experience gains, and I can see those gains, and I'm directly responsible for them. And that is the one place, when you start your day off in a circle of complete control over what you do and you have an achievement there, it sets the rest of the day off on the right trajectory. So that's an example, right? And then I've got friends in the gym because I've been showing up for 6 years, day in and day out. And that's how you build other friends, right? So that's just the way I do it. But there's plenty of other ways as well.
Yeah. Scott, where do you, how are you filling that camaraderie void?
I think Sam's point on the regimen that battle rhythm is really spot on. I do a version of that as well. It also includes my craft of storytelling. So there's voice work and other things, but I've made a lot of friends in that world. I've made a lot of friends in the theater world, in the writing world that I never thought I would be friends with, and they're awesome. But I would say in the world you're talking about, Otis, I agree with you. I find a lot of fulfillment giving back to that community that I love so much. And where I spend a lot of my time is with veterans that have been through severe trauma and grief, and families of the fallen. I love teaching storytelling, but teaching them storytelling is unbelievable. And I just, it's very taxing because of, you're just immersed in a lot of stuff, but I love it. And it reminds me of just how grateful I am to have been in that world and to have served in that world. And, they're still going through it, they're still in it. And I find myself very humbled by that and being able to spend time with them and just listen. A lot of it's just listening to their stories, but that's where I find my reconnection to that world.
Now, while Sam gets a call from the president, what I'd like to do is stay in the veteran tribe, and we started off with our individual perspectives. What do you see when you step out? Because we've all been in those positions, right? Where we've got to do the big strategy look. What do you see as the veteran tribe from your perspective, looking in the broader picture of what's happening with vets around the country? Scott, go.
I think we're in a serious mental health crisis, man. I mean, I'm just looking at what I've seen on the road. I'm looking at the numbers of calls going into the VA hotline. I know that there's varying degrees of like support, non-support for this moral injury thing that came out of the Afghanistan withdrawal. I personally think it's very real. And I think there's I think that recruiting, retention, and all of that is tied to it. I think the way that we walked away from our partners has had a big impact on certainly the guys that I know from the SF world and the broader SOF communities. A lot of them have been impacted by this. They're trying to sort through a lot of stuff, man. And I mean, we do hours of talkbacks. I mean, you guys, Cam, you and Otis sat in on them. I mean, our guys are really wrestling with some big questions right now on their whole friggin' adult life and what it was about. And I don't know the answers, but I worry about it. And I worry about how it's manifesting on a day-to-day basis. And I think that we've got to, again, nobody's coming. I think we've got to continue to engage and talk and try to make meaning out of this, because not everybody is able to make meaning out of it on their own. They're struggling to find meaning with it. And a lot of times it is in the collective that we can do that. And I think that we've got to try to figure that out because the numbers are frightening in terms of what we're seeing with how mental health is showing up in the last couple of years. And I personally think it maps onto the way we wrap this thing up. And, that's what I'm seeing from my foxhole.
Sam, what are you seeing?
I think there's obviously, there's a range of veterans who have been deeply impacted with regards to their mental health as a function of the things that they went through, so on and so forth. But I think they're also equally impacted by what I call broken veteran syndrome, which essentially makes the attribute of being a veteran a bug, not a feature. Because for the past 20 years, and I won't name them, but a number of different veteran service organizations have poured tens of millions of dollars into very sophisticated marketing, branding, and advertising that represents that your average veteran is broken, PTSD afflicted, drug dependent, psychopath who is on the verge of a complete and total collapse, when the vast majority of them are not that. And the vast majority of them, statistically speaking, have never seen combat. right? But one of the things we do here at SOFX is we've got 3 business units. One of those business units is a recruiting agency. And the truth is that while corporations around the country are talking a good game about veteran hiring initiatives, where the rubber meets the road, the hiring decisions are being made by young people in human resources departments that don't know what to think about veterans, and in most cases are scared, right? So when you look at the distance between the talk track, we're this company, we're this corporation, we're that corporation, we're committed to the success of veterans, back where the rubber hits the road, when hiring managers and HR departments and all this other stuff, the look at a military resume, I don't really understand how this adds value to our firm. And I'll break your hands if you put "I have a disability" on your resume. If my recruiting team is bringing you as a candidate into companies, and we do the resume review, the first thing we do is look for the mention of any strike that. That's coming out of it. And the reason why is because in HR, they say that's a liability. That's going to spike our because they think we want their medical plan. In most cases, we don't, because TRICARE is better than what they're offering.
Mm-hmm.
But so there, I'm going off on a tangent. But what I would say is really, really important for transitioning veterans is to realize that it's going to take a while to determine your perfect right fit and your happiest course of action. It'll take a couple years. Don't confuse finding your purpose and all this other stuff with finding a job to put bread on the table. And in many cases, a great opportunity is actually a government service position or something nice and stable for some period of time while you build relationships and then build skill sets. You have to start from scratch. And I apologize about that. But the conversations that we're not having are that just as we would never sit there and take a corporate CEO who has led 5,000 people and then suddenly put them in charge of special forces battalions or SEAL team squadrons or whatever and expect them to be successful, because while they're both leaders, they don't have the background to be successful in that context. So yes, if you've been a military leader, that's great, but realize in the civilian world, you have to start from square one at some place and then build skills and capabilities that are then communicable to any other range of things that you might be interested in. But you got to be humble and start wherever you can get an opportunity and then use that as an opportunity to learn and build relationships. Don't overthink it. You don't have to be happy. You just have to put bread on the table.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Evergood Adventure Wines.
Our loyal listeners know Evergood's founder, Matthew Hexter, and our good friend. From his appearances on the show, they have never disappointed. And Evergood Adventure Wines doesn't disappoint either.
No, it doesn't. You know, Evergood is a craft winery from Colorado that makes wine from lemons, not grapes.
That's right. Picture this, adult lemonade.
Oh yeah, perfect for your next backyard barbecue or hanging out with friends at the beach or the pool. No need to drink a warm red grape wine when it's 100 degrees out or much hotter here in Tucson. Evergood over ice is the perfect refreshment for a hot summer day.
And they come in a variety of flavors, including lemon, strawberry, lime, my favorite for margaritas, grapefruit, and watermelon, which comes in a cool pouch, by the way. These non-carbonated wines check all the boxes: gluten-free, vegan, low sugar, and low in sulfites. Best of all, they taste damn good, and they have fun names too.
Yeah, like their OG lemon wine called Skierpy. Yeah, y'all heard that one right, Skierpy. And I'll tell you, Skierpy is also one of my favorites.
Evergood now ships to 41 states, so you can order your lemon wines online at evergoodadventurewines.com.
Plus, Matthew is being kind enough to offer 20% off for all of our listeners. Just use promo code CAM-OTIS at checkout to get 20% off and start enjoying these amazing lemon wines.
So y'all go to evergoodadventurewines.com. Yeah, boy, evergoodadventurewines.com. That's a mouthful, folks. I'm going to say it the third time. evergoodadventurewines.com, or click the link in the description in the show Click buy now to redeem your Cam and Otis Show exclusive discount.
One thing that I think is really interesting talking about this is one question I had before. We've already really answered this. Is could you prep a transition? Like, is that even a very feasible thing? Because when it comes down to it, when you're actually in it, you have to make those adjustments as you're going. You can prep it, but you have to prep for those adjustments to be able to keep moving forward. And the question that comes to mind is, how do you, or what is your recommendation for how people can answer those questions? The things that people are grappling with, whether it's mental health, physical health, whatever it is, tribe, all that kind of stuff. How do they answer those questions while still moving forward? Because I think it's just go. You got it.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I'm building a program for civilians called Transista to help them basically take a SEAL team mission planning approach toward the business of transitioning careers. And the reason is they are losing their jobs at scale right now because of artificial intelligence. They know it. They're scared. They need a plan. So and it's basically 9 different modules of instruction. The first one has to do with conducting reconnaissance on yourself. The second 3 modules have to do with reconnaissance and targeting of the right industry and the right companies within those industries. Mm-hmm. And then the third set of modules is basically the skills you need to sort of interview, execute the plan, and negotiate and close. But a quick answer, what can people do to prepare for transition? Number 1, do the psychometric baselining with regards to tests that are, and I'll give you guys in the show notes or something. There's a range of different psychographic tests that essentially allow you to determine what are your superpowers and where are your best fit capabilities. Don't waste time trying to shore up things that you suck at, because it's going to be hard and painful. Look at your superpowers. Then there's usually a transition report that can sit there and tell you, well, with these superpowers, you would be best at these jobs. Mm-hmm. You take a look at that 10 or 15 things that the reports spit out. Then you basically do the homework. What could I be most interested in? Okay. Then you narrow it down to 3 to 5. Then pick one primary thing as the thing you're going to focus on, trying to build relationships and mentors that can tell you the way that job is really done to determine if you're on the right track. But also those mentors are going to be able to give you an inside edge and an opportunity to start somewhere pursuing that course of action. Mm-hmm. In a short order, the other thing you want to pick, an industry that's growing and a company that is growing within that industry. And the reason why is because they're much less they're much more lenient regarding the skills and the talent that they'll bring in, because they're moving fast, they're growing fast, they need people. And what they want is hard charging, motivated people. So it's a much easier way to get in. Then realizing that the pace of change in industry is so rapid that you're going to be conducting a career transition about every 2 to 4 years. Not only you, civilians as well, everybody. So it's just the way it is. Unless you get a government, if you don't like change a lot, get on USA Jobs, and these federal jobs are great. They really are. And you're with people that you can have a lot of commonalities with, oftentimes, depending on what, agency and unit and who they serve and stuff. So that's another way.
Yes. Scott, anything to add as far as just kind of putting a bow on it, prepping transition, and then, moving forward while we're answering those questions?
I'm about as radically different on that probably as it could get, in the sense that I'm very much a life by design guy, in the sense that, I did a lot of the government jobs and contracting things, and I wasn't happy. It didn't light me up at all. In fact, I was so done with the military environment. I just couldn't do it. It just was not for me. And I had to find, I met a Green Beret when I was 14, right? And that dude inspired me to become a Green Beret. And I had to find that again for me. And that was storytelling, and it's hard to build a business around storytelling. About 7.5 years hard. Where you're paying people to give a speech for about 3 years of that. So I took a very entrepreneurial kind of self-development thing. And I, it wasn't really artsy fartsy. There was a lot of the stuff Sam's talking about, but it was in the realm of, kind of making my own way and figuring out what it was that lit me up. And it was tough, man. I mean, talking a decade, honestly, and I'm just now starting to get to a point where I maybe know what the hell I'm doing, and it'll probably change again with the economy. So, I think I pretty much agree with Sam's comments. It's just contextually, I took a different path.
I'm sorry, but the only image that popped into my head was Scott at the library still telling stories to the little preschoolers. They don't pay you for that, do they, Scott?
Oh my God, dude! I could tell you stories like it's just unreal. But it's down to what Sam said, though. Mm-hmm. You got to figure out what it is. Like if you want to, if you want to be a storyteller, if you want to be an actor, there is an art and a science to it. There's a rigor to it. And, just because you carried a rucksack doesn't have anything to do with it mostly.
But the shortcut is finding people who are willing to mentor you. If you, in order to get that type of relationship, you have to go into it with an intention to be specific about what it is you want. Like people can't help you if you don't articulate what it is you want. I think that's right.
In fact, I'm giving a keynote this Saturday for Veterans Day, and it's out in California. And one of the people that I'm speaking most about was a former NFL football player that taught me how to tell stories. And I just went up to him and asked for help. And the dude trained me for 2 years, and I think that's true. I think civilians are essential to transition, and the mentorship and technical acumen is essential.
I'll give an example. Like, suppose you have an idea that you want to be a product designer of eyewear, right? And suppose you're 4 years out from getting out of the military. Like, go to Oakley or whatever the case, or Gators, or whatever the case may be. Look up who is in the Army, or served in units that I served in that might be working at one of those companies. Hey, can you introduce me to any veterans that are in the product design group or whatever? And then ask them, say, can you spend a half hour with me? I'm interested in this. I'm trying to plan for the future. I just need a little bit of time. People will give you the time. They will. Yeah. They will. They're eager to help, especially when you're self-directed and you have an objective that you can clearly state. And that's when you want to be doing that stuff for about at least 4 years out. Start to build the network of people that are going to help you transition. And it's not the guy sitting to the right or left of you. Yeah, it's the people that are civilians that are in those businesses, in those industries that you're interested in.
And I think putting a story to what you do as well, like having a backstory, I talk about this a lot, is narrative competence. Is, we talk a certain way as soldiers, as sailors, as airmen, and no one talks like that, man. Like building a narrative competence, a storytelling capability where you can use narrative to bridge the civil military divide, because narrative is a universal singular. I've done a lot of polling to, C-suite executives and HR folks, like, how much do you look at the resume in an interview? And they do, but an individual who can get in there and who has done their homework on the other party and who understands the mission set of the organization, and through narrative can articulate how their journey as a truck driver in Fallujah translates and contextually supports what the mission statement of that organization is. And that employer locates themselves in that story. It's a very, very important skill. Regardless of what you do, I think narrative competence, storytelling ability to parlay and convey who you are and what you're about is something it's really important for transition as well.
Awesome, man. I tell you what, fellas, this has been fascinating and educational, and because it was educational, I had to find something that I found of what I learned that was really profound, and it was that SEALs don't play chess. You know,
I didn't say that. You asked me who was going to win. The Seals would probably stop paying attention at some point.
no, that's just hilarious. But I agree with you 100%. Everyone I've ever worked with, I was like, okay, yep. There's a reason they're a SEAL, and we'll just leave it at that. You know, Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, I got two quick ones. Really, Scott, you said this, and it's something that it's so intuitive, especially in like the athlete transition world. But I'm really going to look into the author you were talking about. But meaning being linked to movement. That you get that meaning from the movement. I mean, it makes so much sense. It's why we get so attached to sports and those kind of things when we're playing them. It's because it's what's giving us that movement, giving us that energy. But then I also got to just think. The classic rock wisdom, the country wisdom, we always talk about it, Dad. There's a line in a song I heard earlier today from the Damn Quails, and it's keep flying till you find a better spot to land. And when we're talking about moving forward and that kind of thing, I just love that idea of you got to keep moving. Life's not going to stop for you to go figure out all of these things. Figure out a better spot to land. You could do that work then. And like being able to move forward while answering those questions. And I think that's just a great piece there.
Sam, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
Scott's discussions about crafting a narrative landed very well with regards to many people in the military have let's call it a stoic sensibility, right? Like, so we've lived our lives like, shut up, take the weight, keep going. Don't say much, do your job and bear it, right? Get through that wall, get up that hill. Nobody's interested in anything. And we do not self-aggrandize at all. And I'm not saying storytelling is self-aggrandizing, but functionally what happens is we lose the capability to effectively storytell or tell a narrative that essentially lands well with other human beings. The essence of relationship building is establishing an interpersonal connection at some level other than transactional, meaning a handshake. You can't be successful being completely stoic and not building a relationship or not communicating what it is you want. Nobody can help you if you cannot communicate what it is you want. And storytelling is part of that in order to establish the connection to make others willing to help. So that's what I learned. So thanks, Scott.
Awesome. Scott, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
I think Sam's emphasis on control, what I can control and what I can't, and then translating that into just the radical emphasis he puts on working out, and that, in his words, nothing is going to change that. I will change my travel plans to get to my gym time. And I love that. I think that's the kind of thing that we can bring from our world, that we all get, kind of get a grin and laugh when we hear each other say that, because we know damn well he means it. And that there is so much in that will help you figure everything else out. Like there's so much profundity in just doing that. That a lot of the stuff you can't control will be okay because of that. So yeah, it's always good to hear a high performer, say those things, because it's just reaffirming. And it's encouraging, to know that whatever path we take after the military, that will always be true. And as long as that's true, I think we'll be all right.
Awesome. Scott, how do folks find you? See where you're getting back up on the stage, whether it's in the play Last Out or behind the podium?
Yeah, scottmann.com. All of my body of work's there. For-profit, non-profit, it's all there. And Operation Pineapple Express came out on paperback today. Awesome. There's a new epilogue in that. Yeah. Thank you. There's a new epilogue in it. And scottmann.com.
Awesome. Sam, how about you, man? How do folks find you and see what y'all got going on?
It's super easy. You can just email me, sam.havelock, HAVELOCK at SOFX.com. If you go to SOFX.com and sign up for the newsletter, We publish 365 days a year. There's usually about 3 stories on special operations and anywhere from 6 to 9 on personal fitness, health, wellness, finance. It's my secret way of conducting an information warfare campaign to provide these different insights to my brothers, right? So I bait people. I show, here's what happened the last 24 hours in special operations. But what it's really about is empowering them to give everybody these different off ramps to think about their personal health, their wellness, their fitness, their finances, different career opportunities, so on and so forth. That's why 75% of the content has nothing to do with SOF typically. So it's really not just for SOF. It's really for people who are interested in personal empowerment. www.sofx.com. Subscribe. We don't share the newsletter list with anybody, and we're not going to pester you with a million different ads that are anything other than a newsletter.
Awesome. And by the way, I don't think I told you this the other day when we were chatting. When you change that middle section, because that's the way mine is top, middle, and bottom section. When you change that middle section to that kind of self-help and the health and wellness, I was like, yes, spot on, dude. Spot on. So I appreciate that. Awesome. Well, guys, I really appreciate y'all's time, man. There's no better way for me to celebrate Veterans Day than to spend it with a couple of my favorite brothers. I really appreciate y'all carving out time today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Great
Thanks,
to
Sam.
see you guys.
Thanks, Cam.
Thanks so much.
All right, Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of the Cam and Otis Show. And a special thanks to our guests, Sam Havelock and Scott Mann, for joining us today. You can always watch full episodes of the show on our YouTube page, and you can check out a full archive of the episodes at www.camandotisshow.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so they can enjoy it too. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.